Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is Simran. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself, broaden your mind, open your heart, and discover who you are. Now, here's your host, Simran.
Welcome to 1111 Talk Radio. It is wonderful to be with you this week. We are nearing the end of this year, and it has been quite a full one. With this episode, we're going to be talking about women. We're going to be talking about satisfaction. And before we get into that, I just was contemplating what women have had to utilize as their modeling as they grew up, as they move in the world, throughout history, all the different faces and archetypes that have appeared that have somehow very outright told us who we are as women, and in other ways, subconsciously or subliminally told us who we are as women. And that then resulted in how we find joy, success, satisfaction, pleasure, or not. When we look at fairy tales when we first grow up and we start having those stories read to us, in many ways, those fairy tales paint a picture that end up being branded in our minds that we believe are going to be the fairy tales of our lives, or the ways that we should be as women, or men coming and sweeping us off of our feet. And then, as we grow older, we start to see our mothers or different women either toiling and giving themselves away, or working really hard and having to fight for their success and becoming more dominant. And so these two polarities begin to perhaps cause friction internally. And then what do we do with those? Do we replicate them? Do we chart a different path? Are the young women that are coming up today saying they want something different than the women of the past? Has the feminist movement now shifted to a different kind of movement? So many questions when it comes to women. And especially after an election where so many of the issues had to do with women's reproductive rights and who we are as women, how we see women in leadership, all of the different things that start to shape who we are as women and how we behave in the world based on that idea. What if there was a way to become a fully satisfied woman, one who measured meaning on her own terms, recovered her feminine power, dropped masculine expectations for herself, and ascended to her own queenly throne? What if you could have your needs, desires, and cravings fulfilled in a way that empowered, enlightened, and enlivened you? What if you could do this outside the constraints of the patriarchy and beyond the bounds of current cultural limitations? Well, Alanna Kaivalya tells us that this is the way of the satisfied woman. She is an author, educator, speaker, and thought leader in the field of women's empowerment and femininity. She's written 5 books, developed international training programs, and taught audiences around the world, spending more than 20 years studying psychology, the human condition, the nature of the feminine and femininity, Eastern spirituality, and earned a doctoral degree in mythological studies and depth psychology from Pacifica Graduate Institute. Her work centers on empowering women through a better understanding of femininity in the modern world. Her most recent book is The Way of the Satisfied Woman, and it helps women redefine femininity on their own terms and gives them clear pathways to become fully satisfied. Welcome, Alanna, to 1111 Talk Radio.
It's a great pleasure to be here, Simran. Thank you so much for having me.
I am delighted that you have written this book and that you have completely focused on this subject of women and kind of redefining what it really means to be feminine, and also opening up to the idea of satisfaction, to really be satisfied. And I think I'd like you to start by giving an understanding of how you see the women's movement having shifted Because at one time it was all about the feminist movement and really fighting for who we are and standing up. And then I think that somehow shifted into really more of women that became masculine as opposed to the femininity that you're talking about in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look at the women of today, and I'm seeing a juxtaposition of women that want to be the boss out in the world, and then a lot of women are wanting to refocus their attention on motherhood, on the power of stewarding and guiding the future generations. So I'd love to hear your view of the expanse of where we are as women.
Absolutely. I think that, first of all, I want to say that any expression that a woman wants to give herself in this world is and really should be awesomely okay. There's no one way to be satisfied, and each woman has a path to fulfill on her own. However, the way that I see it historically is that that path has really been defined for us by the values put forth by the patriarchy and masculinity. The things that we have seen as a culture, broadly speaking, outside of just, men or women, as a culture, we define success in certain ways. And then as women, we've had that success or those ways either barred or blocked or even banned from us being able to embark on them. I think about, things as recent as even in the 70s, I believe, women were not allowed to have their own bank account. I think that the feminist movement has always had strength to it. I mean, look, anything women do comes from strength. We are inherently powerful. I just don't know that historically, up until now, that we've questioned what it is that we're fighting for. We've had success defined on those patriarchal and masculine terms, and we've never really said, wait a minute, what are those terms, and are those our terms? We've seen success, we've seen what it means to be valued in society, and all those values have also been determined by masculine ideals. I think that as, a gender who has been largely oppressed and minimized, devalued, the fight initially was just for, let's just get our fight on the map. Let's just get our voices heard. Let's see if we can fight for everything that men have and not even have had the space to question, wait a minute, what exactly do we want? It's hard to separate the needs and desires of femininity specifically when we don't even have equal footing in any regard. So I applaud the bravery of all of the women who have come before us to start to give voice and rise to these ideas of what women do really want and what it is that makes them feel satisfied, safe, secure, cherished, loved. And I think we're only just beginning to enter an age in our culture that we can separate ourselves a little bit and say, look, we not only want success, we not only want to be happy, but we want success and happiness in our way, in things that, in the ways that we value, in the ways that we want, in the ways that are meaningful to us. And I think only now we're having this space to really define those things together and start this conversation of femininity, what it means to be a woman, and to really center and value feminine ideals, qualities, needs, and expressions.
I think that it is powerful, the various faces and expressions that women throughout time have provided, anywhere from the archetypal goddesses to reigning queens to women that led such movements such as suffrage and all of the different ways that they've brought forward the rights that we have had to fight for. Mm-hmm. And it's important to, I think, also underlie that we have to find our own individual place in that and not just become lumped and decide that we're going to follow what other women are doing. Do you find that that's part of the distinction, the individuality, the depth of inner reflection, and I love the word questioning that you used in terms of questioning the outside, but at the same time, does this require a deep reflection and questioning of who we are even amidst the larger population of women?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that is actually very valuable in our current Western culture is the focus on individuality. We love, we love being individuals. We love doing things our own way. We love striking out on our own path. And one of the advantages that the masculine has is that it has many examples of success being forged on a masculine path. And I'm not saying that we don't have those examples as women. Of course we do. There are powerful women who have forged their own versions of success and satisfaction that we can look to, but there aren't enough. And so what we need now are women who not only are engaging in this conversation of what it is that we do want as women, and what it is that it means to be a woman in this society, valuing femininity, centering womanhood, but then also to further that conversation and ask themselves individually, what do I want as an individual? What do I need as a woman? What makes me feel satisfied? So it's more about just creating some framework and guidance on what femininity is, what it looks like. I speak to women who have not even really thought about the value of their femininity, have not really even explored the depths of their femininity, have not questioned what the culture feeds us in terms of what we determine or define as success. So I think self-inquiry is required on this path. It really is. And I'm excited about that. I certainly am. And I think that one of the great qualities of femininity is inquiry. It is questioning. It's really one of the things that we do best. I have a section in my book called The Women's Inquisition. And I remember my publisher initially, when they got the draft of my book, they said, wait a minute, I don't know if we want to use the word inquisition because historically it has such a negative connotation, especially for women. During the Inquisition, women were thought to be witches if they had intuitive ideas, if they were following their heart, if they were trying to break from the status quo. And I said, you know what? We as women need to reclaim the powers that are ours. And just because Inquisition has had a negative connotation in the past, I think we can redefine it and start to center it as one of our strengths, that when, as feminine women, we feel a sense of discomfort, that is one of the first inklings we have that things need to change. And as feminine women, change is at the heart of who we are. We go through incredible cycles of change regularly, monthly. We are very comfortable, or we really should be comfortable with change because it's a part of our biological makeup. So change starts with us. Inquisition, questioning starts with us. And it's the strength of our own voice and our own conviction and the trust we have in those around us to be believed that will lead to that questioning, to actually creating positive change for us as individuals and eventually, hopefully, as a collective.
I really applaud you in the use of the word inquisition. It actually gave me pause when I came to that part of the book, and it made me step back and go, oh, that word, and then really look into it and see the power of the use of it. So that was truly a powerful part of the book. I want to go back to what you said about masculinity and masculine power and success. And so often for many women, that has had to be the world that they felt like they had to become in order to be successful. And are we now trying to shift that masculine energy into the feminine power, or is this more about shifting from an unhealthy balance of masculine feminine energy to a healthy balance of masculine feminine energy within?
That's a great question. And I think it's a both and answer, Simran, honestly. We do live in a patriarchal culture, and a lot of the values and ideals that we hold in this culture really are based on masculinity. And look, I have no interest in vilifying masculinity. It's an essential counterpart to femininity. It's an essential force of nature. It's an essential psychological energy. The challenge with masculinity or femininity, for that matter, is when it becomes distorted, or as we commonly think of it in popular parlance as toxic, right? Toxic masculinity is a term that we throw around quite a lot. I don't love the word toxic. I choose the word distorted instead. It's just skewed. Masculinity is not the problem. It has its own values, and success for masculinity is important and incredibly valuable, but it is a masculine ideal, and it is achieved with masculine qualities. So let me just give you a bit of an example. Success, when we think about it, has a really clear timeline. It has a really clear pathway. It's very direct. Success is often very singular. Success has a goal to be reached. It often has metrics associated with it. Success can often be at the detriment of others. People often achieve success when they, let's say, leave others in the dust, would be one way to put it. Success can be achieved alone. And often it's like an idea of winning over others who are losing. Now, competition is healthy, it's good, but again, it is a masculine ideal and paradigm. On the feminine side of things, if we were to take a truly feminine approach, which is what I believe feels most comfortable for a feminine woman, it's not that we don't want to be successful. Trust me, I want all women who are interested in, success or achieving greatness in their lives to be able to. Absolutely. This isn't any kind of encouragement in trying to relinquish that ideal of ambition or really kicking butt and taking names in the world. But from a woman's perspective, success doesn't satisfy us. It doesn't satisfy us. And what we want instead is satisfaction. So achieving satisfaction, I found great power in the definition of satisfaction. So I'll give it to you now. Satisfaction is defined as the pleasure derived from the fulfillment of our wishes and needs. The feminine loves pleasure. Pleasure is one of the great domains of the feminine. As a feminine woman, we run pleasure through our bodies. We delight in pleasure. And when we feel pleasure, those around us experience it as well. Fulfillment is an ongoing process. It doesn't have a finish line. And our wishes and needs as women are unique in that they are not our own. Maybe you've heard the old phrase, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Mm-hmm. Well, for women, we are happy when those around us are also experiencing joy, happiness, pleasure, fulfillment. So for women, while success is linear and singular, satisfaction for women is holistic, it's communal, it's ongoing, it's cyclical, it's broad, and it's inclusive. We can change direction at any time. We can redefine our satisfaction at any time. Once we have a sense of fulfillment, it simply grows. It doesn't just end. Success, when it's achieved, let's say we reach our goal for success, well, then what? We just set a new goal or we move the finish line. Satisfaction for women is ongoing. It's a process, and that's something that we really thrive in. When we're feeling good, when we're in a flow, when we have pleasure happening for us and around us, when our world is surrounded by people we trust, we love, who cherish us, we feel satisfied, we feel fulfilled, and we have the ability to get wishes and needs met. This can be in business. This can be in relationship. This can be in our communities. Every facet of life, any facet that a woman wants to press into and move more completely into, can have an element of satisfaction, and that's what will make life enriching for the feminine woman.
When I hear you talk about all of that and express what it means to be satisfied and fulfilled, it has me center back on those words, feminine and masculine energy. Mm. And masculine when we equate success, success feels then masculine. It feels outward. It feels like you said, goal setting and going out. And when you're talking about satisfaction, that seems to really be in line with receptivity, with reclining, with opening to, as opposed to pushing out.
Yes, I would say that that's absolutely true. If we're talking about feminine and masculine as psychological energies, which they are, and that's how I write about them in my book, and that's how I've come to know them. Masculine is that outward force, and feminine is the inward. Masculine is the more conscious, upward moving, linear, directive force, whereas the feminine is the inward moving, unconscious, not unconscious as in out of it, unconscious as in the nature of dreams, emotions, intuition. It's the nature of our inner self, our feelings, our inside, our internal pull. Women will feel satisfied when they are tending to that inward space, when they feel at ease and comfortable with their emotions, their intuition, when their internal guidance system is heeded and honored. Femininity is receptivity. It is that ability to receive. And that's not, again, it's not a passive stance. Receptivity is actually quite active and engaged in that to be receptive, we need people participating. We can't be receptive in a vacuum. I often think about, floating on your back in water. To float on one's back in water, we have to have a certain amount of engagement. We have to hold ourselves in a certain position, and we have to have that kind of surrender and faith in order to be held by the water. That is perfect receptivity, and it's participatory. We need those around us to be trustworthy so that we can release ourselves into the water. The feminine is creative. The feminine creates delight around her, creates inspiration around her. There's an interplay between masculine and feminine always that is necessary. So I know for even for myself, that concept of receptivity can feel a little scary. And I know when I've talked about it, even with people in my publishing world, they say, "Oh, receptivity. We don't want women to think they can just check out or be passive. We can't. But we do need to be receptive. We do need to be in that position for creativity to flow, for new ideas to flow, and really for our satisfaction and potentially success to flourish."
And when you're speaking about that receptivity of the feminine, it really does mean that healthy inner balance of our feminine and masculine energies. So it is still that inspired action of the masculine that knows how to respond to the inner intuitive stirrings of pleasure or satisfaction or desire that happen to be taking place within the feminine. Yes?
Exactly. So each of us as individuals has both masculine and feminine energies within us. And one of the traps that we fall into as feminine women in this patriarchal culture is because the masculine is so valued, we often end up donning the mask of the masculine more often than is comfortable. And if we're leaning too much into our masculine, and if that's inauthentic for who we are, it leads to burnout. It leads to subjugation of our own needs. It leads to feeling overwhelmed. It leads to feeling like we have to be all things to all people at all times. And it leads to us just being drained of our feminine gifts. So for us as feminine women, everyone is going to have, again, the masculine and feminine. But for feminine women, our primary polarity is the feminine. So what we want to strive for is that our internal masculine is actually at the service of our primary feminine polarity, that it is our creativity, it is our pleasure, it is our intuition, it is our emotion that is really at the forefront of who we are. It's at the forefront of our expression, our decision making, our daily lives. And then yes, if goal setting, if success is necessary, if outward movement is necessary, then it is in service to our feminine. So that's what happens on an individual level for us, kind of in the vacuum of our own selves. But this also plays out between people outside. So when we have a person who identifies primarily as the feminine, what we'll want to find are the masculine counterparts around us who can be of service to our feminine gifts. So that balance happens both inside and outside.
Becoming the satisfied woman relies on a foundation of femininity, tried and true qualities that are ingrained into the fibers of our being and the tendrils of our soul, as well as a bold new integration of our femininity with modern ideals and unexplored possibilities. The satisfied woman is a healed woman, rectifying past patriarchal wrongs within herself and extending that new balance into the world she creates around her. She measures life not through success, but through satisfaction, the pleasure she derives through the fulfillment of her wishes and needs. My guest today is Alanna Kaivalya. She is an author, educator, speaker, and thought leader in the field of women's empowerment. She has written 5 books, developed international training programs, and taught audiences around the world. And I want you to find out more about her. You can find out more about this book and order it, The Way of the Satisfied Woman, Reclaiming Feminine Power, and all of the events and upcoming things that she has going on by going to thesatisfiedwoman.com. When we come back, we're going to find out more about becoming a satisfied woman and the 4 foundational keys that begin that journey. We'll be right back after these messages.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Have you seen 1111? Do you wonder why certain numbers keep showing up in your life? 11, 111, 22, 33, 444? People all over the world are seeing 1111 and learning the language of universal communication. Subscribe to 1111 Magazine today. www.1111mag.com. 1111 Magazine is a bi-monthly print publication that offers a rich, multi-sensory experience. As you engage with experts and topics of consciousness, become enlightened, empowered, and energized, so you live a passionate and authentic life of conscious choices. 1111 Magazine, a daily staple for lifting the mindset, discovering the heart, and stepping into conscious living. 1111 Magazine. Order now at www.1111mag.com. 1111mag.com.
Do you want more? More joy, more abundance, more power and presence? How would it feel to have more loving relationships, more empowered community, greater fulfillment, and life purpose? The 1111 Mastermind community inspires, empowers, guides, and supports transformation. Shift your mind, expand your heart, deepen insights, let go and chart a new course, dream a new dream. The 1111 Mastermind community is an online portal for personal transformation and soulful expansion. Go to courses.1111mag.com. That's courses.1111mag.com. Change begins with you. Let it be simple, convenient, and transformative. The time is now. Step through the 1111 gateway. Courses.1111mag.com.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You are listening to 1111 Talk Radio. Simran is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at IamSimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
The Way of the Satisfied Woman challenges the conventional wisdom that has long pushed women to model themselves after male-defined notions of success. For centuries, the female struggle for equality has meant fighting for the same opportunities as men, to make their own choices, build independent lives, craft powerful careers, and exercise their agency. But has this been the wrong approach? Could striving to be equal to men actually be holding women back from realizing their fullest potential? This is from the book, The Satisfied Woman, The Way of the Satisfied Woman, Reclaiming Feminine Power by Dr. Alanna Kaivalya. You can find out more at thesatisfiedwoman.com. Welcome back, Alanna. You say in the book that there is a foundation of a life of feminine satisfaction and that we need 4 keys to begin that foundation. What is that?
Yes. So the 4 keys are security, safety, trust in yourself and the world around you, and to be cherished by the masculine around you. The path of satisfaction for the feminine woman really relies on having these 4 keys in place. So satisfaction is it's a good feeling. It's a fulfilled feeling. It's a feeling that generates pleasure, but we can't really get there until these 4 keys are established. So these really are the most important foundational pieces of a woman's life in order to then move on the path to satisfaction. Now, safety and security really have classic definitions. To be safe is to know that you can fully be yourself without any kind of injury, physical injury, mental injury, emotional injury. And to be secure means to have everything you need to flourish as a feminine woman. If you are lacking in anything, if you are lacking in emotional support, psychological support, financial support, relational support, that can be a challenge to your sense of security. So as individuals, we may define what makes us feel safe and secure differently, but the feelings of safety and security will come with knowing that you are free to be completely yourself and that you have everything that you absolutely need to be completely yourself.
Now, when we look at these 4 keys, these are things that a woman needs to discover within herself what those mean to her. And then is this something that she's creating within herself first?
Yes and no. So one of the challenges of being a human in the world is that there are other humans in the world. So while I think we have a very strong desire in our modern patriarchal culture to be individuals and to DIY, right? We really love DIY, do everything ourselves. It's honestly not both practical or possible to do everything ourselves. I would love if we could just be satisfied in a vacuum and not rely on anybody else. But the relational nature of the world we live in, it just doesn't make that possible. And not only that, as feminine women, we are hardwired to desire connection to others. And it is the others in our lives that will actually have a big factor in contributing to whether or not we feel these 4 keys. So yes, while it is an individual woman's place to define what makes her feel safe and secure, and she may be able to provide many of those things for herself for much of the time, eventually, we also need to take into consideration those around us to make sure that we feel safe and secure in the places, spaces, and relationships that we occupy. It's a twofold process, both inner and outer. And that follows with the trust and the cherishing as well. The trust is trust ourselves in making sure that we are making the good decisions that we need to based on our own intuition. Trust really comes alive for us as feminine women when we listen to our intuition and follow it and heed it. But we need to trust the people around us to also heed and follow our intuition, to make it important for them, to center it. That when we say this doesn't feel right, that they actually listen and believe us. So it's impossible for us as feminine women to trust ourselves if we are in places, spaces, and relationships where we are not being trusted and where we don't trust others. Cherishing is the same. And cherishing, I think, really is the biggest one of the 4 keys that has a relational component to it. Because while the masculine part of us as feminine women can certainly take on a cherishing role within us, and we can do things to honor and center and cherish our inner feminine, It is the masculine around us, those that we choose to be in places, relationships, and spaces with, that will help to enhance that and make us feel that sense of cherished. And my favorite definition of cherishing is that we never leave the feminine alone in her pain until we have found a solution. So cherishing really is a conversation. And again, yes, it can happen internally within us as individuals, but I believe it is more powerful and potent and life-affirming when it happens in relationship to the masculine around us.
Speak a little bit more to that statement you just said. We never leave a feminine in her pain.
Yes, until a solution can be found. So the feminine will often be the first one in any given situation to feel discomfort or pain. So we think about the canary in the coal mine, right? There's that old story of bringing a beautiful little bird down into these dark, dank tunnels. And as soon as there was a level of a lack of safety in that coal mine where the air was not good to breathe, the first one to be affected would be the little canary, unfortunately, right? This is a sad story.
Yes.
In any relationship or in any situation, it is our feminine that's going to feel that first. We as intuitive and emotionally powered beings are going to be the first to feel a sense of discomfort. Something is going to feel off within us. And that can start as just a little bitty pull or a little tiny sensation within us. It doesn't have to be a great big pain or event or trauma. It can start as something small. But it's going to start within us. The masculine won't often recognize that or see that initially. So when the feminine feels a sense of discomfort or like this pathway isn't the right one or it just doesn't feel right, it is the masculine that needs to listen, whether it's our own masculine or whether it's the masculine around us, in order to find a new suitable pathway. And that is the solution. So, I'm a sailor, Simran. I have a sailboat and I like sailing here in Southern California. And I remember working with a sailing instructor who was a man, and he was amazing. And he always would tell me that women make the best sailors because they are so receptive to the conditions of the wind and the water. And they can feel the boat, and sailors have often said that boats are feminine, boats are female, because they have that beautiful cavernous inside and they carry the sailors across the ocean. And I feel that when I'm sailing, that I'm the first one. As soon as the wind shifts or the seas change, then immediately, without even knowing how to explain the mechanics of it, I know that the course needs correction. So I don't want it to rise to the level of pain, but I think it is the most powerful way to put it, that the masculine never leaves the feminine alone in her pain until a solution can be reached. We are the change makers. We are the ones who will tell not just ourselves, but community, society, the world at large, hey, something needs to be different. It's going to come from us. And if we are to make change, if we are to make progress, if we are to make movement, if we are to release the status quo because it is currently toxic or harmful, that voice will come from a woman's intuition, and it will be listened to by the masculine.
I was going to say that leans back to that whole conversation around intuition, whether it is wind, water, energy, or pain, that we must cultivate and reclaim that power of intuition within ourselves as part of the path.
Yes. Yes, we must.
You write in the book, we have freedom to be feminine in whatever way we choose. What we need to be mindful of is curating a life for ourselves where these 4 keys are present in as many areas as possible. So when we're talking about curating a life, do we look at each sector of our life and we really take these 4 keys and we say, okay, am I creating each of these things, or do I have the men and women around me, the community around me, to safeguard me in these ways so that I can fully anchor myself in my power?
Absolutely. And I consider myself very organized. I like the idea of almost making a list. How about in my relationships? How about in my career? How about in my community? How about in my spiritual or religious pursuits? Whatever is important to us as women in these different areas of life, I want us to consider where we can enhance these four keys if they are not yet present. And one of the things I felt as I was writing this book, and, Simran, I didn't just write the book. I felt called to write the book. It's been welling up within me as a deep intuitive sense that it needs to happen. This book needs to be written. It needs to be said. And so much of what I felt I was doing in this book was giving permission to women to disrupt their lives, to question the status quo, to fire their friends, their community, their career, the things around them that are no longer working. One of the distorted ways that we have been taught to be women in this culture is not to question. Our intuition has been repressed. We have told not to question the status quo. Don't rock the boat. Well, as a sailor, I like it when the boat rocks. We need to really understand that we do have the power to move in different ways and to move in different circles and to redo our lives in whatever way we need. It doesn't have to stay the same. Just because it's been a certain way doesn't mean that we need to keep the status quo. Keeping the status quo, trying to keep things on the straight and narrow, trying to keep a straight path, that is masculine. And it's not necessarily the best way for the feminine. The feminine likes to change direction. The feminine likes to change things up. The feminine likes to be circuitous and double back if need be. And course correction is a feminine value. When things aren't working, we find a new way to work. And in the past, it's gotten us in a lot of trouble. We've been called witches. We've been burned at the stake. We've been vilified. We've been hanged, and worse. But we live in a time and a place now. I won't say that it is safe to question, but I believe it is safer. And for those of us that have a platform or a community or a place in which we can start to question what no longer works for us and change it for the better, not only does it make it better for us, but it makes it better for those around us. One of the values of femininity is that we don't feel happy unless those that we love are also happy. So we're not going to beat the drum of change unless it is actually of benefit to more than just us as individuals. So this is really a movement we're starting when we as individuals choose the path of satisfaction.
In reading the book, it really did feel like a call that you answered, and how you expressed it is really beautiful, well laid out, and you go into so many different areas within the way of the satisfied woman. There's a powerful line here where you say the stress of dissatisfaction cuts deep. Some of the ways that stress and dissatisfaction show up would be what? And I guess that's where you're talking about some of the boundaries, some of the cutting out of people from your lives that are no longer loving or supportive. Are
Yes.
there any other ways that we can rule out the stress of dissatisfaction?
Yeah, I want to speak to that in a moment, because I think as women, we've been taught and trained, again, in this distorted way, to just accept dissatisfaction. When we speak up, when we voice our intuition, when we voice our emotions, we are told that it is not logical, that we are crazy, that we need to rethink it, that we need to shut up, be quiet. We are often repressed, put down, and shut down when we voice what it is that we need. And that stress does have effects. It's going to have physical effects, psychological effects, emotional effects. I myself have gone through an autoimmune disorder that, in examining my own life, really arose as a result of being shut down and being told to repress my needs as a young teenager. I can even recall the moment that I was being quite literally told to shut up by my own father, and feeling the effects of that in my throat. And the autoimmune disorder that I struggled with was a thyroid disorder. And I could feel my body responding. Every time I would be in a situation where I felt like I couldn't speak up for myself, I would feel my throat get hot. People would even notice it. Wow, Alanna, your throat is swelling, it's getting red. So the stress effects are real. I don't want to downplay them as, oh, you're just feeling uncomfortable, get over it. The stress effects are real. It actually has a detrimental effect, not only on our emotional well-being, our psychological well-being, but also eventually our physical well-being. Stress elevates cortisol, which increases risk for heart disease. It's just, I think everybody at this point can agree that stress is just not good. It's just not something that we want to live with. And so I want to encourage women to voice their needs, to voice their stress, to voice their intuition, to voice their emotion. And when they receive pushback, to notice where they can shift that. And I understand that we have circumstances sometimes that we can't shift completely, right? Let's say we receive pushback in our career, but we can't afford to quit our job. So what are some ways we can lean in and try to adjust that? Can we speak to a different supervisor? Can we rally other colleagues to our cause? I understand if we receive pushback in family, we can't always fire our family, but can we have a meaningful conversation with them? Can we bring in a third party to support our needs? Can we minimize contact with our family? Can we engage with different family members? There is always going to be a solution or a way to shift so that we can get our needs met more often, because that is the heart of satisfaction. Satisfaction is the pleasure we feel through the fulfillment of our wishes and needs. And every human on this planet, it is a human right and a human value to have our needs met. Every person wants their needs met. And if they're not being met, stress will increase. So it's almost, I feel like it's not just a pathway for better living. I feel like it's a pathway for just living. It's a pathway to life. Our life will be diminished and compromised if we don't have our needs met, if we don't walk this path to satisfaction. So it's really critical that we start.
Well, and with the stress, with the hypervigilance, with the martyrdom, the overextension, oftentimes the lack of balance, and the many hats that we wear as women that can very much deplete us if we're not careful, it's important, I think, that women begin to understand that softness is strength. Vulnerability is valuable to our voice and our expression, and that gentleness is an act of grace. And so many times women view softness and gentleness and tenderness as too weak or too delicate. But yet, do you find there is importance to that? And how do we frame it so that women understand that those are actually attributes that support our feminine and our masculine strength?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I love the word that you use, grace, and that gentleness, that receptivity we were discussing earlier. I believe it has been thought of as weak or too soft because it is often taken advantage of. So in that distorted masculine format, the masculine will take advantage of the feminine and drain the feminine. And that is incredibly detrimental for both the masculine and feminine. When the feminine is in her full power and is able to be vulnerable, which means really connecting and tapping into the emotions, which are a feminine strength. When the feminine can be receptive, which is that hotbed of creativity that really is her domain, things are created where there were no things before. That is the generative quality of the feminine, to create something from almost nothing. That is one of the greatest gifts and powers of the feminine. These are strengths. These are powers. These are powerful. But because they've been taken such advantage of in the past, we're afraid to express those things. And when we do, we are hurt by them. I want women to find places, spaces, relationships, people to lean into where they can be graceful, where they can be creative, where they can be receptive. And those qualities are not taken advantage of, but rather leaned into. And what happens when those qualities are leaned into is those people leaning into them show up with their greatest selves. So, for example, if you have a woman who is, let's say, receptive to a new idea or receptive to a new way of being, it almost like it creates a vacuum, and the masculine fills it with ideas, with direction, with guidance, with energy. We need to create that. I think of it like a bowl, right? If you think of femininity as a bowl or an empty space, the masculine will fill it up with all of the good things that the feminine sets up that container for. So there is always this dynamic interplay between masculine and the feminine in her receptivity is so powerful because that's where we get that generative, regenerative aspect of life itself.
I want to go back to something that you touched on in the beginning, and it has to do with women's ability to change and our cyclic nature, our rhythmic nature. And when I think about that, we really are nature. We flower continuously each month. Yes. You know, we couldn't be any closer to nature because of the way that we are constantly changing. Can you talk a little bit about the stages of women and what we go through and how we find strength in those stages, how we celebrate those stages from maiden to mother to crone to really uplift who we are as women all along the way, and so that younger women also start to revere all of these stages in very powerful ways?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are so special and unique with our feminine bodies, with our female DNA, with the way that our bodies grow and change in ways that the bodies of men don't. They just don't. Men are able to have children throughout their lives. They don't experience menopause like we do. They don't have the monthly hormonal changes that we are subject to as women. And all of those factors create a sense of timing that is absolutely critical and important for women. I did some research with my book and revealed that procrastination happens far more in men than it does in women. And my summation is that because for women, we just don't have time to waste. We have these very clear demarcations of development for our female body that take us through different stages of life. The first being really from the age of puberty through about the age of 25, where we're exploring who we are and exploring our fullness as feminine women. And then from the age of about 25 to 45 or so, just around the age of menopause, we explore our ability to move into our fullness and our experiences craft our world around us. So whether we choose motherhood or not, whether we choose to lean into our career or not, we're taking the experiences of youth and leveraging them into the experiences of our adulthood. And the choice to become a mother for every woman is a very important choice. Some of us will choose to do so, some of us will not. And the choice to have children or not does not make us either more or less of a woman. In fact, statistically, 20% of all women, for whatever reason, will not enter into motherhood as one of the phases of life. And then culturally, we unfortunately look upon women beyond menopause as less valuable. And I want to shift that with my work because it is at this age where we are no longer responsible for bearing the children of our society that we can shift into more of a mentorship or leadership role, which is something that our young women are desperate to have these days.
I'm going to pause you right there, Alanna. We have run out of time, and there's so much valuable information in your book that I'm going to ask everyone to just buy your book and discover more about not only these phases, but healing the feminine psyche, discovering how to build the satisfied relationship, and even going into things like the case for companionship, finding the right partner, your stages of relationship, and how to create a more balanced life so that you are balancing out different aspects between nourishing yourself to alleviating the competition in your life and finding more communion. There's so much in this book that I urge you to pick up your copy. Alanna Kaivalya says, our femininity, our pussy portals, our pleasure, our life-giving forces, our sacred emotions, and our intuitive guidance all create the most extraordinary potential for a life that is fully satisfied and joyous at every level. Part of thriving is knowing how and when to settle into your natural feminine polarity. She thrives in spaces where she is securely held, delicately supported within the type of boundaries that make rivers out of oceans and provide safe haven. Get your copy of The Way of the Satisfied Woman and find out more about Alanna Kaivalya and all of her work. It's time to reclaim your feminine power. Go to thesatisfiedwoman.com. Until next week, I want to thank Alanna for being on the show. And next week, I'll see you and hear you again. My name is Simran, and in love, of love, with love, and as love, be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality, your heart to greater compassion, and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host Simran next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living here on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Remember, you are not on the journey. You are the journey.